This video is part 2 on how to secure a database report. In part 1, we talked about proactive forensics. So this time we will talk about declarative auditing. Declarative auditing is part of the IS methodology to understand. You define rules, or declare what you want to call, report on, alert on, and so on. Many times I call this compliance reporting, because this is what's needed by most compliance requirements. It sounds simple and easy to do, but many times when I come to a new customer and ask, what do you want to do? The answer is, I don't know. So the challenge with declarative auditing is about defining your goals. What do you want to achieve? And this video is going to try and give you some guidance about it. The problem with databases is that they run a lot of activity. So the challenge with declarative auditing is effective reporting. How to create a short, meaningful report, because a report on a billion SQLs is not going to help anyone. When we talk about declarative auditing, we usually try to focus on activity that is high risk and low volume. High risk is obvious. Low volume is because of effective reporting. It's much easier to create short and meaningful reports when you have less activity to work on. There are other kinds of controls that are more effective for other types of activity profiles, and we're going to talk more about them in the next video. So the question is, what kind of activity is declarative auditing effective for? It's usually surrounding these subjects of sessions, DDLs, DBA activity, sensitive programs, and sensitive tables. There's other kinds of controls that are more effective for other kinds of activity profiles. So let's take some examples and see the challenges and how we'll overcome them. We start with session reporting. So in sessions we have multiple dimensions. We have users, programs, IPs, and so on. We can create a different report on each one. So one report on all the users in the database, another one on all the programs, another one on all the IPs, and so on. But we can also create a report on multiple dimensions. So a report that has a user, program, IP, etc. That would give us tighter control. So we will know which user, all the programs connected from, all the IPs are connected from, and so on. That's a longer report and a tighter control. Since it's a longer report, we might want to apply it only to a subset of the activity. So only to DBA activity, or only to applications, and so on. Another aspect in reports is report tuning. How do we exclude information that is less relevant? For example, remove sessions that we don't care about, like the SQL Server agent or the auto schedule. When we look at DDLs, for example, tuning a DDL report will mean excluding DDLs that are irrelevant. For example, creating and dropping temporary tables in SQL Server. Or alter session that's not even a real DDL. Another thing to consider with DDLs is to create different reports for different subsets of DDLs. For example, we can create special reports on DCLs. That's DDLs that deal with users and permissions. We should also consider with DDLs whether we want a report that just shows counts. So how many DDLs did a particular user or program execute or session? Or do we want detailed reports that will actually list the DDLs? So this session executed these particular DDLs. DBA monitoring is a little more tricky because of the volume of activity. Even though DBAs don't run a lot of activity, it's too high of a volume to inspect each activity individually. When we look at sensitive programs like SQL Plus, Management Studio, and so on, we have a similar problem. It's not a lot of activity, but it's too much to inspect each activity individually. So when controlling these, DBAs, sensitive programs, and so on, we usually want to focus on a subset of the activity, like DMLs, access to sensitive schemas, access to sensitive tables, and so on. Finally, we have sensitive table access. That is obviously a high-risk area, but many times not low volume. So the question is not only what do we want to report on, but also what do we want to record. We might want to only record certain subsets of the activity. For example, we might want to exclude the application activity. That will definitely reduce the amount of sensitive table access that we monitor. We could also focus only on DBAs accessing sensitive tables. Or maybe other kinds of subset of sensitive table access that is more relevant. Another option is to record everything and then just report some counts. As you can see, in reporting we always want to exclude irrelevant activity. More importantly, we want to focus on subsets of the activity that are more relevant to us. Proactive forensics is a very powerful tool in order to identify which parts of the activity are relevant to you and which ones you want to exclude. For example, we want to understand which users are active, which IPs, which programs, which users from which programs, who's on ATTLs, who's accessing sensitive data, and so on. By understanding these activity profiles, we can achieve effective reporting without missing something important. But most importantly, we want to ensure that we reduce the number of false negatives as much as possible. That means we want to make sure that the high-risk activity that we're targeting is not going to escape our efforts. For some kinds of activity, declarative auditing isn't the right thing for these. In the next video, we're going to talk about anomaly analysis and see how it all comes together. If you have comments or want to know more, email me or leave a message in the comments.